I turned it off because I had. Let's try again. Good afternoon. That's okay. You can give me the raspberry. I told the clerk, seen me turn it on, and I turned it off after I talked to Charlie.
I know that you will get even with me down the road.
You're darn right I will. Welcome to Council and Committee meeting on June the 20th, 2017. We are beginning today with an early start at 2 p.m. and will soon head downstairs to receive a presentation by the Emergency Medical Service Division. Well, I'm looking for someone to move or receive the agenda as presented. Councillor Black. Yes?
Mr. Chair, with regard to the agenda as it is printed, I looked for other business. I didn't see other business on it.
There is no other business.
No, I have other business.
It's just, we will have other business as we go further on, okay? Just to keep you happy. All those in favor? Those, okay? I guess that's it. So I guess we're going to be heading downstairs to the, see what we have to be educated. Okay, sorry I forgot one. Disclosure of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof. Is there any? None? Okay. Change. Just take a deep breath. Okay. Thank you, gentlemen, for making it in. We are going to deal with staff report CSD 17-16 EMS striker power stretchers and load system. So who's going to deal with that? You? Go ahead. Ms. Townsend.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, to Council. I'm here today not only as your EMS chief, but as a paramedic who has served this community for over 20 years. Throughout those years, I have faced a major back injury and still fight day to day with a torn rotator cuff. We all, as paramedics, know the inherent risks of our profession. Extreme physical exertion, communicable disease risks, mental health stress, exposure to inclement weather, and working days, nights, and holidays and weekends away from our families. We do this, we signed up for this because we love our jobs. We also recognize that with the increasing call volume that we face, increasing patient waits, and increased medical equipment we carry due to our expanded scope of practice, this is all creating a substantial lifting exertion on every single call we do. While we understand these risks, we also recognize that new technology is continuously being introduced to improve and protect us and our safety. This has been the case with needleless and bloodless catheters, stair chair improvements, as you saw, and personal protective equipment. Never in my career has there been an invention that has shown such potential in preventing injury, saving and lengthening paramedic careers, all while improving patient safety and comfort. The Stryker Power Stretcher and Load System has now revolutionized the transportation of our most vulnerable citizens in our community, those that are injured and ill requiring paramedic care. Stryker is becoming the industry standard with more than 30 Ontario EMS services, the entire British Columbia ambulance service, and most of Manitoba already on board and implementing this system. We feel that the numbers that we presented in our research proposal to you speak for themselves. Overwhelming improvements in paramedic safety, wellness, productivity, and morale. Cost recovery measures from decreased WSIB claims and modified work hours. Health and safety recommendations from the ministry, from other EMS services, and from our own county, validating that power stretchers and power load systems have dramatic impacts on the careers of paramedics. Included in that is highly tested safety measures and improvements for the patients themselves. Our report details the fleet-wide implementation of this important initiative with a first phase starting now. In order to take every precaution possible and reasonable in protecting the health and safety of all of our paramedics across this county, as we are legislated to do, we are asking to purchase and implement 6 Stryker Power Pro XT stretchers and power load systems into our ambulances. This will nullify the need for us to call specialized bariatric equipment, delaying patient transportation. This will also reduce lift assist calls in our community, which require additional ambulances or allied agencies to give us a hand. It also ensures that every base across this county would have one system in place. Further implementation of the rest of our ambulance fleet will happen as we replace vehicles in the future. Our paramedics have been field trialing the system that you witnessed today for almost 3 months, and we have had nothing but extraordinarily positive feedback. They have received thanks from their patients about the comfort level they experienced and the decreased anxiety with being that comfortable on their stretcher in one of the worst times of their lives. The paramedics have finished their shifts with smiles on their faces and continue to praise the innovative system that is helping save their backs and prolong their careers. They volunteered to help with all the research. They created the presentation today. They have worked with their health and safety committee to ensure that we could trial this product for 6 months, and they are here in many numbers supporting this today. We thank you in advance for all your consideration of this vital project and appreciate your ongoing support for all the paramedics in Norfolk County, as you always have. As always, I'm willing to answer any questions you have about our report.
Thank you. I have Councillor Wells.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And this is committee, so we don't have to stand. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. So thank you very much. And thank you very much for the demonstration. I thought it was wonderful and could certainly see the benefits of the new system. My question, through you, Mr. Chair, to Sarah, is how long have you known that you were going to ask for this to be on the agenda?
So recently, we always investigate new technological advances in EMS. What we were waiting for is actually the study that was released by the University of Waterloo that encompassed close services, Niagara EMS and Hamilton EMS, because we felt it encompassed an actual Ontario-based university study, so not biased within the service itself, of actual numbers that after a full year of implementation, reduce these injuries by 78%. So we wanted to make sure that we had all the research backing before we brought any proposal forth to this council.
And my second question would be, if we said yes, but not until after we do the budget next year, what impact would that have?
Through you, Mr. Chair. The impact in waiting is the fact that, A, we have one system in place, that the training has all occurred, so any waiting that we do for further implementation will require retraining down the line, so it's another cost factor. In addition, we just feel that this is an intervention that has gone through the province, is becoming the industry standard, and we would like to implement it for the health and safety of our paramedics at the earliest possible moment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll have my say when it comes time for us to
Councillor
debate this.
Oliver, then Councillor Columbus.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Sarah, for your report, and to all the paramedics for being here. I have a couple of quick questions at this point. I'm looking at the bottom of page 3 on the report, where it talks about the financial services comments, and you may or may not be able to answer this. We might have to have someone from finance. But the last paragraph, where it talks about the projected expenditures in 2018-19 and 2020, and then it's that next phrase, and ongoing at approximately $55,000 per ambulance replacement after full implementation. What does that mean? Is that an annual cost you're saying that will be there every year, or exactly what does it mean? Because it seems high if it's an annual expense.
Through the chair, no. So the $55,000 is to do one full ambulance completely. So what we're looking at is the ongoing cost would be a replacement value once the stretcher has reached its 7-year limit. We will say that Windsor EMS is currently trialing the power load system and have managed to extend the life of that system, the actual loading system in the ambulance, to 10 to 12 years. So we're actually looking forward to seeing their results over a 5-year plan in order to, once we have the initial allotment outfitted in our trucks, which will hopefully, the plan is over the next 3 to 4 years, that at the end of their lifespan, we will know how long we'll be able to keep the power lift. So the stretcher itself will have to be replaced every 7 years. We're hoping that the system in the trucks will last double that.
Right. And my second question for now, you mentioned in your introductory remarks that there are 30 EMS services in Ontario presently using this system. I should likely know this, but how many EMS services are there in Ontario? And what percentage, in other words, have already made the switch?
So there are 52. Yes, and there's a lot of investigation going on right now with reports going in and future budget consultations for most of the services.
Councillor Columbus.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sarah, I believe you mentioned that the life expectancy will be 7 years of these units?
Through you, Mr. Chair, on the stretcher itself, yes,
Right.
the life expectancy is 7 years.
And how many dollars would we normally budget over the next 5 years to maintain the existing stretchers? Like, how many dollars do we have? I think I read here $12,000 for replacement of 2 stretchers in 2017 capital budget.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that is correct. We have right now budgeted $12,000 to $15,000 a year to replace 2 stretchers every year.
And that would be going into the future, the same amount, like for the next 5 years, 7 years?
Correct. I believe that's in the capital forecast.
Could be more, I guess. And I think it's $55,000 per unit, right?
The $55,000 per unit includes the stretcher, the power lift system, and all the installation and warranty.
Now, being that we'd be looking to change over our whole volume of stretchers eventually, Can a better price not be negotiated than 55,000?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the prices are set by Stryker Canada through Rollins. There is RFPs in motion that will encompass all the EMS services, so there's other regions that will be putting out RFPs for the provision of the system from Rollins to see if there is a better pricing that will be available to EMS services across the province.
And where are these units manufactured?
The Stryker head office is out of Michigan in the United States, but Stryker Canada has 2 factories, one in Ontario, which I'm not sure where, and one in British Columbia.
Thank you.
Councillor Black, then Mayor Luke.
Mr. Chairman, and I too would like to thank everyone for coming and giving us the demonstration. It certainly was very educational, and can understand a lot better hearing from everyone around here, you know, the problems with lifting and the damage that can occur to all of our ambulance paramedics. I just wondered where you're going to get this money out of our equipment reserve. That's what I see in the motion, and I'm just wondering what the balance of our ambulance equipment reserve is. I don't know if you know or if James knows. Like, do we have enough money in there, or will it put us in the red like the roads budget?
Through the chair, we do have enough money in there currently. However, at the end of the 10-year capital forecast with the replacement of ambulances and with the current contribution from the levy, we do go into a red at the end of the 10-year program.
Okay, so in the meantime, though, we have enough money in those reserves. That's very good news. That makes a decision a little bit easier. And
Go ahead, yeah.
Through the chair, I'd just like to add something that finance will be investigating is whether we can actually use our WSIB reserve, which is a little bit healthier than our ambulance reserve. If we can somehow prove the savings in WSIB claims over the next few years, we can do a transfer from reserve to reserve, and it'll make that reserve a little bit healthier in order to fund these programs.
well, that makes complete sense to me. So, since we would be saving on WSIB claims, so why not tap into that fund? And my last question is, the ministry pays for half of this, right? So whatever the total is, we're only paying half.
Go ahead.
Through the chair, yes, but council and myself, I needed to understand this as well, being the new treasurer. The province does fund 50% for operating costs throughout the year. However, this cost is capital in nature. So eventually, yes, we do get 50% paid on these capital projects, but through amortization expense year over year. So if we were to depreciate these assets over 7 years and pay for them over a 7-year period per our income statement, that's where we would get our 50% funding.
Okay, so, but it's not a check up front. It's over time and through depreciation.
Through the chair to Councillor Black, that's correct.
Okay, I get it. All right, thank you once again.
Mayor Luke, and then Councillor Height.
Thank you, Chairman Geisens. A few questions for you to Sarah, and some have been asked, so I won't repeat them. However, a total of 12 ambulances in our fleet?
Through you, Mr. Chair, 11 ambulances.
11? Okay, and basically you're looking for this year, 2017, to outfit half of one per station to start?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's correct, 6.
And then from 2018 through the chair to 2020, the next 3 years, would be the other 50% of the sort of upfront cost to get all our ambulances fitted, correct?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that is correct, plus 2 spare stretchers. Currently, we have spare stretchers in case something mechanical happens. We clearly would need to put one into the truck.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple more questions. Sarah, I almost have the feeling you didn't expect to get the report this soon this year because we only put $12,000 for stretcher replacement in our capital budget last year, which this is significantly more, and we understand why. Did you expect to be dealing with this in June, this soon?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Council. I think, as explained before, we were waiting on the study to be released, and it was not released until March of this year for public knowledge. It was completed last November, so we were waiting for the Ontario-based research facts to come clear before we presented anything to Council.
One last question, Mr. Chair. Sarah, understand the funding model on this, which is good, and I have no problem with going to the reserves. That's what the reserve money is put there for, is to buy things like stretchers and equipment. What's this $165,000 levy that we did not budget for? What's that going to do overall to your budget? Do you know? Can you answer that? Maybe you can't. Would this be a straight over expenditure on the budget?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that is my understanding.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Height.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question should be directed to the Treasurer. You were speaking earlier about the 10-year capital forecast, and you expect there's funds in there, but you didn't mention when that forecast ends.
Through the chair, the 10-year capital, well, it's the 10-year reserve plan really is more accurate. And at the end of 2017, in the ambulance equipment and vehicle reserve, or the EMS equipment and vehicle reserve, there's approximately $270,000 projected as a surplus. However, at the end of 2025, it sort of jumps back and forth depending on what the 10-year capital forecast shows as capital expenditures, but it dips down to about $190,000 as a deficit. Now, Council needs to understand that this reserve has historically been used for vehicle purchases only, and we are expanding that for equipment purchases because this equipment, particularly the stretchers, are part of the ambulance, so we feel that it's justifiable to use this reserve for it. However, when we did the reserve contribution calculations, we didn't take into account equipment as well being used. So we may have to, with our reserve report coming up, we may have to adjust the contributions to this reserve from the levy.
Okay, thank you for that. I noticed before we were taking stretchers from the General Capital Replacement Reserve. Is there any loot in that one?
Through the chair, if you give me 5 minutes, I'll let you know.
Okay, and then is that how you would amortize it over 7 years?
Through the chair, we would this would be a new capital asset for us. We've never purchased these types of stretchers before, so I understand it has a 7-year life. So that would probably be the amortization period we would use.
Okay, and so if that account, through the chair, it has $270,000 in it, and we're looking for $330,000, where do you propose the other 60K is coming from?
Through the chair, I believe it was $165,000 coming from the reserve, and the other $165,000 is coming from the levy. However, over a period, while we amortize the asset, we will eventually get that $165,000 back from the province. So at the end of 7 years, if we only buy one set of stretchers, we'll net zero.
Your comment in my report says that it'll be a $330,000 cost for 2017 to be funded from the EMS Vehicle and Equipment Reserve and the tax levy in the amount of $165,000.
Through the chair, the total cost will be $330,000 divided by 2, half of it coming from the reserve and the other half coming from the levy, eventually brought back through 50% funding from the province.
Okay, now I'm even more confused because why are you splitting half through the levy when you have $270,000 sitting in a reserve account?
Through the chair, the reserve would be used for the initial purchase of the asset as well as the levy. We could upfront the costs from the reserve as well for these stretchers. However, we felt it was more prudent to receive the funding over time from the province because that's their mandate. They fund 50% of your capital assets while it depreciates.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Brett.